the Detroit Pistons would have won back-to-back NBA championships, and Melo would have at least 2 NBA championships on his resume. At least 2. Because as great as the Detroit Pistons were as a unit, and they were a great team, Chauncey Billups at the 1, Richard Hamilton at the 2, Tayshaun Prince at the 3, both the Wallaces at the 4 and 5 positions. As great as they were as a unit, none of them had the talent or the skill set offensively that Carmelo Anthony had. None of them. And I love that Detroit Pistons team. They're one of the greatest defensive teams in NBA history. And so Melo, in the early part of his career, while he was in Denver, this was why George Karl had an issue with Melo, because he wanted Melo to not only focus on being a scorer, but also commit to being a great defender as well. So if Melo would have been drafted by the Detroit Pistons, playing in that organization with Joe Dumars as the general manager, with Larry Bird as the head coach, they would have taught Melo about how defense wins championships. So Melo would have been a better defender earlier in his career, in the early stages. He would have taken defense more serious. But offensively, he was exactly what the Detroit Pistons needed. He was exactly what they needed. As great as they were a team that scored points, as a team. They didn't have no true number one go-to option on that Detroit Pistons team. It was whoever had the hot hand that particular night. You team Melo up with these brothers, Melo would have been that go-to scorer in late game situations for the Detroit Pistons. So I definitely believe that we would view Melo differently had he been drafted by the Detroit Pistons. But myself, being a Melo fan, I already know how big time Carmelo Anthony is. So one thing I want to talk about too, when it comes to Melo, there are people that have questions about whether or not Melo is a first ballot Hall of Famer. It's funny to me because the only thing that you can say about Melo is Melo doesn't have a championship. And I do believe that Melo is partially to blame because he doesn't have a championship. Melo wanted to make his money. Melo was from the rough streets of Baltimore. So Melo was about his money. So those of you that don't know, when the Big Three came about, it was supposed to be LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Melo. It was never supposed to be Chris Bosh. If Melo would have, this is the second decision or thing that happened that cost Melo a championship. If Melo wouldn't have signed for that 5th year in Denver, Melo would have been a part of the Big Three in Miami with D Wade and LeBron. And playing with Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, Melo would have won multiple championships with the Miami Heat. As great as Chris Bosh was never on the level of Carmelo Anthony. Ever. And I love Chris Bosh, 2-time NBA champion. Without Chris Bosh, the Miami Heat in the Big Three era, they don't win those championships. But he would have not had the impact on the Miami Heat that Melo would have had. With Melo, it's a possibility Miami would have won 3 out of 4 years instead of 2 out of 4 years. So there are players that got championships that aren't as good as Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh being one of them. Kevin Love has never been as good as Carmelo Anthony is either. And y'all know he won a championship in 2016 with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So when we talk about players going into the Hall of Fame, don't just bring up championships because it's more to it than that. And I'm excited for Melo because this year he's going to get an opportunity to win his first NBA championship now that he's teamed up with LeBron James and Anthony Davis in LA.